If you're suffering from recurrent dizziness, maybe you keep getting BPV over and over again, maybe you just wake up and you're always lightheaded, maybe you're having problems with your short-term memory, then this may be the issue that you're having, because problems in specific energy pathways within the brain can create a lot of problems for people having recurrent vestibular or balance problems. And these can, in some people, even lead to conditions such as dementia, not just short-term memory loss. Brain fog and clouded thinking is also another common thing that we often see associated with this. So let me talk to you about a little bit how this works. There are specific areas of the brain that really need different forms of fuel. And one of the key areas we want to talk about is this back area here, namely your cerebellum and your vestibular system. These are the upper parts of your brainstem, your ears, the cochlea, these type of mechanisms, and that big cauliflower thing sitting at the back of your head. And these things really require a pathway known as your pyruvate dehydrogenase, PDH. And this pathway is a critical pathway that utilizes glucose for its main energy source. So this is what we see here with it. This is our glucose conversion into pyruvate, into acetyl-CoA. And this is the main pathway that we use for energy within this system. And when this pathway doesn't function very well, the result of that is that we start getting breakdown in these areas, which can lead to this short-term memory problem, recurrent balance issues, brain fog, and all these other things that we spoke about just before. So what we want to look at in these people is restoring this pathway. And there's a lot of different things that we need to understand first that can damage it. So the first thing we understand that shuts this whole mechanism down are what we call reactive oxygen species, namely or especially superoxide free radicals. And these free radicals are often a byproduct of energy production. And this is a real important step, because when we start getting too many of these reactive oxygen species being developed, we shut down these enzyme complexes, we lose the energy from these pathways, and the result of the loss of energy of these pathways is the reduction in brainstem function, balance mechanisms, short-term memory, and a few other specific conditions. Improving energy through this mechanism is really critical if you want to improve your balance as well, especially your vestibular function. So there's a few things that we understand that enhance this process. Firstly, to produce more of these acetyl groups, we can use substances that are acetyl-based, such as acetyl-carnitine, but we also know vitamin B5 is really critical in improving that mechanism and the transport from fat. This pathway through here really is a B1, B2, B3, B5, and lipoic acid dependent pathway. So again, really critical pathways, really critical nutrients that are involved in this process. And then we also know magnesium is part of that initial process as well. So we've got some really key important nutrients that are very, very critical in this process to restoring all of this. But we can also look a little bit broader than that about reversing and restoring reactive oxygen species back to their normal level, so bringing them back down. And this really is a big function of what we call our antioxidants. And the big antioxidants that are really critical with this are an enzyme called SOD2 and another substance known as glutathione. And these are the two things we want. And there's a lot of different ways that we can potentially increase those mechanisms. But if we can reduce our free radicals, improve this pathway function, then the net result basically is we improve energy, restore these areas, and get them back up and running and help improve our balance. If we keep looking forward and we move further down the energy cycle, the real critical thing with energy in mitochondrial health is to make sure there's no damage getting done to the mitochondria. And one of the richest sources of energy production in the human body, or in the cells, I should say, is what we call our electron transport chain, ETC, electron transport chain. And this is basically about taking FADH and NADH, which is pretty much B2 and B3, knocking off the hydrogen ions off them, push them on the side, and releasing these electrons out in the open. And by doing this, we establish this gradient of hydrogen ions, which eventually leads to lots of different hydrogen ions at the very end of that pattern. And that allows for this flux of hydrogen going over the membrane, which spins almost like a bit of a windmill to produce our ATP, or energy. And this is the most significant amount of energy that we produce other than perhaps through some forms of fatty acid metabolism. This is really critical. The problem with this is all these gathered electrons eventually go on to form this superoxide free radical, this O2 minus free radical. And this O2 minus free radical goes through and damages our PDH pathways that are really critical in terms of our balance, brainstem function, and these type of things. But it also goes just generally and damages the mitochondria itself, which reduces energy production. So it's quite ironic that a byproduct or a waste product from energy production could potentially even destroy energy production itself. So we need a way to get rid of this waste, this pollution. We have to get it out of the system. So what we do is we use an enzyme known as SOD2, and this is a critical enzyme. And this SOD2 converts this superoxide free radical into hydrogen peroxide. So it starts breaking it down. And this is a much lesser form because we do know this binds with iron and creates a whole lot of other issues as well. But one of the things that does happen by doing this is it reduces it down, but hydrogen peroxide is still quite damaging itself. So we can't just leave it there. We've got to go a lot further with it. So this is where we activate glutathione. So glutathione is produced in our liver from 3 amino acids, glutamate, glycine, and cysteine. And it then converts this H2O2 hydrogen peroxide into basic water that we can use. A very simple reduction process which converts a dangerous thing into a less dangerous thing into a beneficial substance. So this is a way that we can convert waste product into something quite useful. The problem is, if we have problems with SOD, or if we have problems with glutathione production, which many people do have, this process becomes stagnated. Our superoxide free radicals start accumulating. They damage the mitochondria. As they damage the mitochondria, we start losing energy production, especially to our brain itself, our neurons, and this can lead to degradation of the brain over a period of time. So a few things we can do to increase glutathione. We can increase precursors to it. So things such as N-acetylcysteine really helps it. We can take glutathione in a form that works, such as liposomal glutathione, which does seem to help a lot of people. We can also take the initiation products, such as cysteine, glycine, and glutamate. The ironic thing about all this stuff is these things are actually derived from different areas themselves. So for example, glutamate is derived from our energy production patterns. So a Krebs cycle, for example, is one source of it. So when we have problems with energy production, it can actually reduce glutamate production, which then in turn reduces glutathione production. We do know also that glutamate can be converted into glycine. So if we're lowering glutamate, we can be lowering glycine. We know glycine can also be converted from various substances inside our energy pathways that prevent us developing oxalates, which is another big problem, which really requires B6. And we know cysteine is a substance that is produced from methylation, and this can also be a big problem with those who have liver issues. So we can see there's a lot of different factors that can really go on to complicating the elimination of our waste products from energy problems, which can in turn impede energy problems, which can significantly affect our body and brain functions going forward. So if you do have any issues with brain fog, you have issues with fatigue, maybe your short-term memories is dropping off, maybe you're waking up during the night. There's a lot of different reasons why this can be replaced, but energy production is a real critical issue that is often the case in many of those circumstances, which often require improvements in our electron transport chain or require improvements in our pyruvate dehydrogenase system in order to maximize the benefit and get our brains back on track. If you have any questions about this whole mechanism, how energy fits into perhaps your problems, and you want to ask a few questions, please feel free to post and send me a message. Always happy to help out. My team is always here for you whenever you need anything. Anyway, I'm Trev from Spinewise, and we'll catch you in the next vid. Bye for now.